let's start creating our chat thread list. We're going to have a list of active chat threads in here. So we're gonna have an avatar, the sender, whoever starts the conversation, and the last message. So we're gonna create a list item, and then the user click one of the threads, it will take them to the chat / the channel ID. So let's start building it now. First, let's get a thread model. Thread class will have an ID, which is a string, an avatar, also a string, and we're going to have a members that will be an object. Okay, now let's go for the thread service. Here we're gonna need to import the Angular Firestore collection document. We're also gonna need the observable. Let's also pull in the thread and the message model. And we're also going to need the authentication service, so we can get the current user ID and the message service. Let's start by creating a threads collection, and let's make a thread doc. This will hold our thread information, and we're also gonna need to create a message observable. In our constructor, let's make a link for the Angular Firestore authentication service and message service. They all can be private. Okay. We need to add on both. We need to add the type, which will be thread. And now we are ready to create our functions. First, we need to fetch the thread list from Firebase. So let's again create a get threads. As you may have noticed, for every module we create, we also create something like this all the time, where the get thread singular always ask for an ID. In our case in here, we're going to get a profile ID. Let's gonna name it profile ID, and I'll explain that later. Let's continue with our get thread list, thread collection. So let's get the place in our database, AFS collection, and it will reside in chats. Now we only need to return it, this threads collection, and call value change in it. Now to get the thread, let's link the thread doc in here, give it a place, and again we just need to return it and call value change in it as well. Now let's go on our thread component, the threads component.ts, and here we also gonna need an observable to hold the threads. Observable, import from Rx, yes, and it will be a thread, an array of threads. So let's import thread in here. In the constructor, we're gonna call for the thread service. And let's make it private. And here on the ng on init, we're going to just call the get threads from our service. Get threads. And this will hold the array of threads. Now in the HTML, we need to create a for loop where it's gonna display the single threads. So let's create a main tag, and inside we're gonna call the app thread. And here we need to create the ng form, and we're gonna let thread of threads, and gonna put the async pipe. So now there's nothing to display. What we will need in here, we need to pass it down the information about the thread. This one, we need to pass it out to the thread component. Thread equals that thread num here. And you're gonna receive it in the child component. we've seen this before. We need to use the input thread. It will be a thread. So now let's add the input in here, and let's import thread model. Now our error is gone, and here would be a mat list inside the mat list icon, mat list item there. And now we're gonna have an image. So the source will be a directive from Angular, and here it will be thread avatar. Let's just remove the alt. And here we're going to just put the last message posted on this thread. Now let's create a button so the user can go to someone's profile and see a button to chat with them. So we're going to add in here on the user's detail. But first let's create the thread service create thread function. Create thread. This will take a profile ID. Now we need to create a current user ID variable and store the current user in it. Current user ID. So now we need to create our thread object. If you go in here on the model, we're gonna need an ID, avatar, and members. So let's start with the ID. In the ID, it's a bit complicated one. We're going to give the profile ID and the current user ID. And here we're going to evaluate if there is already an ID with this format, with the profile ID underscore current user ID. It will evaluate this and the other way with the current user ID first and then profile ID. If neither of these IDs already created, it will create this one. So no matter who is the sender, it will be only one thread amongst these two users. So now let's create the avatar. This will be the auth state, photo URL, and the members. The members, it will be an object, and here we're going to add both IDs and set it as true, so we can use it for lookups after. File ID, you're gonna set it as true, and the same for current user ID, true. So if you're wondering why the brackets in here, this is the way we can set the key in an object. So let's create the thread object now. We have the information. It will be a thread equals to ID, avatar, and members. Let's create a path that's on chats ID. And this ID will be this one here. Either one of this or this one. Whoever starts the chat first. So now we just need to return FAS doc. Give the thread path, and here we're gonna set the thread object, and we're also gonna give the merge true, so we don't destroy anything in case there is something there already. So let's use this to create a button. Let's add it to the user's details, so every profile would have a button in the user detail. Let's just add a mat card footer here. Let's align it to the end. Let's add this button here. Let's call it send message. I'm going to add a click event. The chat. We still need to create this one. Let's take a look. Users. Send a message. We need to give the material raised button. Actually, we can do better than this. Instead of the button, let's add mat mini fab, and inside let's just add a mat icon chat. So let's go to the user detail component and create this chat function. We're gonna need the ID, so let's just take the same here. And as we saw in here in the service, we need the profile ID. That's what is the service is asking from this chat. So we're gonna profile ID equals to the one extracted from the URL, and we're gonna return this .thread service. Let's add thread service in here. There we go. The comma here. Thread service dot create thread. Here we need to pass that profile ID, and then let's just add a console log to confirm that was successfully created, and also a catch to see if there's any error. So now if you click on this button, let's see if it creates anything. Thread created. Now in our Firebase database, got a chat, we've got an ID, and as you can see, the ID was created with both user ID, and we have the members in here. So I went ahead and create 2 users. Let's check their profile. Let's create a chat and see if it gets duplicated. Here we have the both users, YYY, YYV, and the AY4, both true in here, and we have the ID. Now let me create on the other side, and it just got changed the avatar in here. Let's have a look on the chat. Now we have one thread in here. Just gonna close this ones because we don't need any more. It works, it only creates one chat. Here in our thread service, we just checked this one works. It evaluates one first and then see if the chat already exists. If not, it creates it. So now let's go on the thread component.html in here. We're going to add some CSS. This CSS will come from the material Angular as well. Mat list avatar. And the other one is components list mat line. You have subheaders, we have a few things that you can use in here. So let's add a mat line and see. That's already better. And if you add something else in here, let's leave the thread ID for now. We could later add in here something like the sender's name. We need to grab the last message from the messages array. So we're gonna do that after, and here we could do a lookup for the sender's name as well. So now let's make this work. When you click, it goes to the chat ID over there. For that, we need to create in here a router link. So it's gonna be in the chat. Here on the main, let's put a router link. Thread ID. Okay, let's try and click. Now we've got an error. Cannot match any routes. So that's a routing problem. Let's go to the chat module. Here we left the detail as a placeholder. Now we need to add the ID. Let's try it again. We click. Let's try to create a message. And there we have it. It sends a message. Now let me pull up the other user. And as you can see, our chat app's working. Users can talk to each other in real time. So now I have both thread and message components working. We need to set a security filter and add some CSS to make each message to display different depending on the whoever is sending it.